Here we are live, and I think that was my phone just deciding to let me know that the Bogus Hangout has just started. Would I like to tune into the stream? We have the eponymous Bill and Ammon. We have Lyndon with us, and that's all we have of our regular. I don't know if we can call them regulars anymore. Come on, it was Terry and Jen and Christian. Irregular as can be. So let's kick off in the
standing room in the
traditional. Bill, what have you been up to this week?
I've been wondering that myself. Figured out.
One of those weeks where you're not quite sure what you've done. You know you've been busy, but there doesn't seem to be much to show for it.
Remember last week when I said the USPTO website broke all the links?
Yeah.
Website? I linked to them a lot.
Yeah.
I should have linked to the Google patent version of patents. I didn't. I'm switching over slowly. It's taking lots of work.
Yeah. You'll just finish it, and then Google will decide they're going to update theirs.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Donald Trump updated the U.S. Patent Office's budget, but
it's probably
he built a wall. It broke all the links.
Fired them all.
It's possible.
It is possible. Yeah. It's funny the things that can throw you off completely. The best laid plans and all that, and yeah, one single change to something that you hadn't planned for can suddenly throw a spanner in the works that really does screw up your whole week. How about you, Lyndon? What have you been up to this week?
I guess pretty much. I think the same as Bill. Well, no, one of the things I've done is I've pulled up. Decided to refurbish an old website I have that I spent 4 hours creating 6 years ago, and it just tinkered along. So that's kind of interesting because looking through all the stuff I did 6 years ago, which was all a lot of it doesn't. Back when I had a sort of private blog network and stuff like that, a lot of it doesn't really applicable now. So it's. Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
I must admit, my prediction is that this is the year Google will target PBNs heavily. There's been rumblings, there have been things about it. They've become too noticeable, too talked about, and I think this is the week that this is the year that Google is going to really start targeting the PBNs.
Well, I had one. What was it back? I think 2009, 2010, and it worked okay, but I could see the writing was on the wall. But that was 6 years ago, and I thought they were going to get taken out. And I haven't really looked into them for a long time. And I've started looking at. You find these weird Facebook groups which sort of all religious zealots for PBNs, and it's like sometimes I think it's just laziness. I think marketers just trying to find the easiest, laziest way to rank, and that's kind of what the PBN represents.
It's long been one of my morals that in marketing, if you want an easy win, always bank on people's laziness. If you're selling anything, play to the lazy angle, and you will usually win. People are lazy, all of them.
And what I found with them is everybody always says, "Oh yeah, just rank this website using Web 2.0 links and using Medium.com links and all that." But they never actually give you the actual evidence of there's no way to forensically take apart what they've said. It's all anecdotal, and of course the danger is that they tell you and it's revealed and it gets destroyed, I suppose. But even then, you'd think there would be, if it worked, we would look into it and figure out. But it just doesn't seem to work. I mean, what are the thoughts of everybody about PBN?
PBNs still do work, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to set them up right. They have to, they're only going to have the juice that they've got, and that juice has got to come from somewhere. They could, if you interlink 100 zeros, they're still worth 0. There's got to be some source of getting some juice in there, and the way that a lot of people do it doesn't make any sense at all, because they still believe in this whole domain authority thing, and that doesn't exist except for when cleaning up spam. If you look at the times that Google talks about domains, it's in when it can recognize that certain domains are known for bad behavior. There's never been one that I've seen where, oh, this domain is so good that anything they put up, we're going to instantly, give a ranking bonus to it. That's never been in any patent at all. Domain authority is something that is a negative. It's a spam detection thing, but there's no such thing as domain authority for rankings. That's why, all of these people selling you, oh yeah, I can get you links on Forbes, and I can get you links on HuffPo and all the rest of it. And it's the user generated section with no links coming to it. And it doesn't matter what the domain is. Google was never built so that those areas had domain authority, but people think it does.
Yeah, and yet it's interesting that industry exists, and it must make money for them, or else they wouldn't do it. And yet the evidence for it working is just really shady. It's just not there.
Well, no, but it unfortunately puts up this pixie dust domain authority score. So, oh, it did work. Look, my domain authority's gone up. Yeah, but that we used to talk about toolbar PageRank as pixie dust and say how worthless it was. And like I say, domain authority is the same worthless green pixie dust, except this time made by a third party, not even with Google's name to it.
Does the toolbar still have it?
The only places I'm seeing people talk about domain authority are places like HubSpot, which just ran a big series of articles on latent semantic indexing. And they talked about any type of semantic indexing, any type of semantic meaning to words as latent semantic indexing, not realizing that it's a technical term that comes from a 1990 paper from Microsoft on a certain technique that is not latent semantic indexing the way they use it most of the time. It's just so misleading to tell people it is something that it really isn't.
Well, it's got the word semantic in it, so it's obviously something to do with Jewishness.
Anti-semantic, yeah. Yeah, so when you take the LSI and the semantic and you roll it up with the romantic and all of that, just, the way people throw around the words, they're talking about rank brain, and it's like this magical phrase that people like to invoke, and the way that it's used is so meaningless, although I would have to say, there is no domain authority that Google recognizes or uses it as a rank formula. But I would have to say that for human beings, domain authority could simply be a corollary for brand. And if you have a brand that's popular and a lot of people hold dear to their heart, then that is something to pursue. It is something that, can be measured, although brand awareness is a very hard thing to measure. It's very vague, but good.
Exactly. One thing we talk about is, models that most algorithms are mathematical models of things that we know about and are trying to simplify into a mathematical means that a machine can understand. And domain authority was something that SEOs talked about mostly before search engines really were, as a very simple way of trying to explain the interlinking of a domain and the overall link power that domain had got, and that its link structure then passed around the site. But there was nothing there that wasn't down to the link structure and the brand authority that made people want to link to it. If you've got a choice between a couple of sites and one of them is a big known brand and the other one is a nobody, most of the time you're going to cite the big known brand because that gives you reflected kudos psychologically. Sometimes naming the cool one that nobody's heard of is great when you're doing a discovery piece, but otherwise, you're trying to trade off that name, and that means they've got to recognize that name.
Right. And along with the brand and the brand affinity and the kinds of things that you're talking about is traffic, right? If it's popular, it's popular, and there's no getting around that. So some domains just have lots more traffic, and you start getting traffic through links from someplace, and great, you think you've tapped the mother load, and so you stick a name, on it. So
I've got a hat now. I don't feel.
There you go. I was going to say something, Andrew. Lyndon, kind of leaving you out in the cold there. Now we just got to work on Fab.
Yeah, now he's looking to see who's got one. He's going to end up with a dough rag that he's borrowed from the cleaner.
I'm gonna try to catch one. I'm gonna feel like I'm the outsider.
We do have a theme.
Yeah, Doc, you were the next one in. How are you, sir? What have you been up to this week?
Oh, yeah, this weekend we celebrated our anniversary, and a good friend of mine for nearly 30 years came down, spent the weekend, and took us out to dinner, and we sat here and shot the breeze and reminisced. We've worked together at a couple different companies. We were neighbors years ago, so it was a good weekend. So I didn't get as much done as I probably should have, but it was a nice reprieve, and my wife actually recognized me without having to look at the back of my head to wonder who it was.
Yeah,
I did field a couple of comments, though, about he had to hurry up and come back down because it was nice to see me away from my desk.
Yeah.
Actually, I found some tools. I sit next to our creative team, but some of them are not really appropriate. One is like...
Hey, that'll work. That'll work.
Certainly, I have this kind of... I don't know, this was kind of a stunt or something that we... I know I could wear this one if you want for the next 5 seconds.
Christian will be upset if you don't, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I will. We'll donate it.
Wasn't hat day, not drag day. Drag day is next week.
There's no hat, unfortunately. I've been looking for.
Well, you can put your hoodie on, Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so Fab, what have you been up to this week?
Bunch of things. Iron, as usual. It's a constant topic, and and setting up a bit of what the long-term projects are, just to have an idea on developer resources and things like that. Because we have a lot that we realized that oh shit, we need an army of people to do it, and then but probably reality is that we don't have that army of people. And then we'll have to prioritize some stuff. So it's thinking what is better to do sooner than later. Because some stuff really we have seen one of the component of the site that we released last year. And if we would have waited 1 year to launch it, right now it would have been in a pretty shit. So it was probably a good idea to do sooner than later. But then sometimes sooner also means having a very scrappy MVP that doesn't really do the job for a user. So you have this downside of you could launch something that user feels like a shit today versus something good in a year, and then you will try to find the middle ground of like getting that out, ranking and working somehow. Because also, you know, there's benefit in terms of like testing. The more traffic you get, even though the product is actually crap, you could speak to this customer, you know. But until you don't have traffic, it's difficult to iterate on product. So yeah, this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So how many hires, and what's been the toughest part of that hiring process?
Well, it depends. Like we have a few SEO, few social. I'm not like hiring anyone. So like these other guys in the team are taking care of all the paid advertising, paid search, paid social, product marketing people. Almost impossible. People that like call themselves product marketing, most of the time they come to the interview with no idea what that thing is, you know, and and like all these people, yeah, and yeah, these have been probably SEO has been one of the hardest, just because people don't apply as much as we would like, and then there's the ongoing developer subject, which is are never enough. Like, no matter how many developers.
It's funny you say that, because I'm one of the very few who, when it's a general SEO role, I actually prefer the marketing types, because I've always found it, I can teach a marketer enough technical stuff to get by easier than I can teach a lot of the more technical types enough empathy to get by.
Absolutely.
So Fab, what's a good question for you to ask an SEO during an interview? What would you want to know?
Would you like to buy me a drink?
That's the obvious question. I don't know, like most of the time we like, yeah, you're right, but like the empathy side of things, if people don't have empathy for our mission as a company, for the way our values and like the way we do stuff, it wouldn't fly anyway. Like, so like that's why that's almost given that people have that, and that's why it's even harder, right? Because you're looking for someone with technical skill that plus has got that empathy and understanding. So even like very technical people, even like software engineer, these need to have a lot of like empathy to the actual customer. You know, some of them they have customer interviews to, like one of our like in like software developer did like a 20 or something round of coffee shop testing on one of the products, and like there was nothing of coding involved in that bit. It was literally just getting a sense of what people wanted. So we do that a lot, but that makes the whole process higher, like harder and harder. You know, you end up like with very little chances, or otherwise you have very, very good people, marketing, technically, and everything that they don't care about what you do. And like especially like nothing against people that do consulting previously, but some of them, when they decide to move like to work for a company, you know, they don't spend 5 minutes looking at the site. And yes, it's fine. You know, we can still have the conversation. I can still understand how good you are, but like those 5 minutes looking at the website is you know, caring about what we do, which is like is not like it's important when you join. It's not just your ability to be good on everything. If you don't care, I think it's little chance that it could because like, you know, especially working when you're like you have clients that you like, clients that you don't like, and that's life. You know, when I was working in agency, it was the same thing. But imagine now where I wake up and I think about money transfer, and I go to bed and I think about money transfer. If I wouldn't like it, it would be such a shit. Like, you know, you wouldn't wake up every morning and go to work if you're not excited about it. Like,
if the first thing and last thing you think about in bed is money transfer, you may have a slight problem. But it made me think of the content marketing webinar that we did, Lyndon, where, you know, when we said you're doing this for two reasons: communication and persuasion. You know, and the persuasion part takes empathy. Without empathy, without the ability to understand how somebody else is feeling or is likely to be feeling in sometimes a hypothetical situation to us, we can't be effective marketers. We can't write effective content. We can't hit that emotional button.
Yeah, but that's why like these people that we are in SEO, they are purely technical people looking after working with engineers. The content side of things, we almost managed to completely move that to non-SEO people, and at some point customer support will be fully running that. Again, they're quite close, but like at some point they will fully run that, but not just like writing stuff that has got very high empathy, but writing stuff that drives a lot of traffic, which is like is key, and especially because we started with like very little traffic on the blog and everything. So like that's how we run things. So SEO are people who generally like, yeah, they need to have like a lot of the product that we do, they need to understand our customer well, but then when it comes to content, like we also, because we don't scale physically, one SEO guy doesn't understand all customer segments in 36 markets. There's no physical way in which we can do it. So our customer support people, they speak to these people all day, and yeah. So
I think it's very good. Sorry, I think it's a very good idea to separate the SEO and the content people. I mean, constantly I find, you know, when I'm talking to clients, that they have the SEO people. The SEO is usually the person who brings me in, and then I find out that they've got a huge problem because the SEO is also dictating what content will go on the site, and usually it's the content that the SEO wants the readers to read rather than what the readers want the readers to read. And so you get, and of course it's all about keywords and getting the right keywords in the headlines, and so it's a kind of it's a re-education thing that you have to sort of teach people the art of publishing, really. I think we overuse this word of content marketing, of course, and we should, you know, sometimes think of it as publishing and the old ways of doing things when things were on paper, because the same process that the brain is using over content is still the same. It's just a new word now, and it's just the medium, the delivery system that's changed. But and the SEO, I think, has the mindset that they love the delivery system. That's what they're in love with, the technology and the push button marketing aspect. Whereas the content marketer, or the content person, or the writer, or the creator, they want that reaction from a real human being, and they want someone to weep into their cornflakes as they read their copy, you know, and it's a human thing. And, you know, being kind of I always feel like I'm squatting in the SEO industry, because I'm not really an SEO, even though I can do SEO, but I'm really a writer. And it's just interesting to watch that dynamic go back and forth between the SEOs and then of course then you got all the social media people who always seem to be 21-year-old females with sort of things on the end of their pencils.
We still give SEO tools to people who make content, just to like help them to be better with data. So like, okay, that we are helping customers, but let's not help customers on a topic that customers don't search for. It's just based on your feeling that maybe is not really true. But equally, probably more challenges we have them with when we have to decide between content for social versus content for search. Versus, like in search, we have very functional content that helps customer and is like not that engaging sometimes, because it's very functional. It's more around guides and like stuff that really helps them. Versus if you go with the same type of content on social media, sometimes, especially Facebook, on some stuff, it doesn't really fly in terms of engagement. So there's probably a higher division. But like people in customer support, they, even without knowing, like some of the most successful like piece of content that we had was literally FAQ article about them being so frustrated about the topic that one of them went out and wrote a few articles on the FAQ and for some reason it was ranking for some crazy keyword that like it would have been successful on a proper landing page or an article, but still somehow it is a good connection between like customer support and like it's difficult to have them completely off from what
the problem is that most SEO tools tend to be from that non-empathic technical side of SEO, and they're geared towards raw numbers and things that don't necessarily, you know, I've often talked about KPIs, kills performance instantly. Because people start chasing these imaginary numbers like domain authority that doesn't actually translate to anything. It doesn't actually exist. And it's nice to know you've had so many visitors, but unless you know which personas those are, you know, how many of those were actually qualified to buy? Never mind how many did buy, how many were actually qualified to buy? How many of the people coming to your article are not the buyer? They are a office junior whose job is to shortlist things that will then go to a committee that will decide which one they're going to buy. And there's all your copy written towards getting this conversion that can't possibly happen from the guy who's on your website. And you do need to understand this sometimes. And, you know, I've talked in the past about making sure you've got downloadable stuff for those particular kind of customers. If you are in the B2B market, this is going to be happening to you a lot. The guy who comes to your site can be empowered to be your salesman, but it's pointless you selling him. And it's going to be a committee decision as well. The next thing is that the technical guy, the head of IT or whatever, is going to come in and check that your system will work with their system and won't break everything. And then it will be, you know, the guys who actually use it. And finally, the guy who pays for it just signs it off.
Which is why it's important to have a strategy with all this, and that everything's interconnected and works together. And what we talked about on the SEM Rush webinar about psychographic profiling and you know, so individual profiling. What was the other one? The persona profiling, all that business. Yeah. And you've got to design each bit of content for each one of those people. But I'm kind of interested actually in with TransferWise how they actually go about creating their content, because I've looked on their website and the stuff that you do is absolutely brilliant. You know, I think the first time I noticed TransferWise was when they did the naked people marching on the Bank of England, and I'm wondering how. Not how do you come up with that idea, because that's an obvious idea kind of to do, but who says, okay, let's do it? Because that's a risk there. And most
who says, okay, let's search for that and find it?
We did some fairly crazy stuff, and we still do sometimes. We still have stands sometimes, but it depends. Probably that kind of stuff was like us being less mature as a company. Things have evolved a bit, and also what is at stake is slightly higher now, I would say. But like yeah, and also there's not much of the way we operate as teams. There's not much like veto on stuff, or at least like teams are quite autonomous in deciding what to do and figuring out what they're trying to do and coming up with a plan. And people will give feedback on the plan, but hardly people will stop you from doing something as long as it makes sense.
So you would be willing to do something extremely experimental just to see what happens, because you might find sort of like the hidden mother load.
Yeah, in the past, probably right now we less experimental stuff. So right now we have marketing channels that are like we build in proper teams, we scale in globally, so like it's less like let's see what happens. we have activities that we know that work quite well. We have like channels that have got like plans that work on like you know, the plans are always like getting bigger and better, but like there is stuff that we already know is working. But even on content, when I first joined, we were still writing about things like you know, 7 best bar in Rome, and we still do sometimes, depends, but or like coconut water market. We had an article on coconut water market that was ranking in position 3 for coconut water. I don't know. I just found it there. Luckily, I managed to kill it as soon as I could. But like, what we realized is that like by educating customers with content, we get better results, and we acknowledgely is much better for our customer. Like the problem with our industry is that people don't know that they're getting overcharged when they're sending money abroad, or don't know that their bank or their current providers is not free. You know, the commission is not 0. It's just that there's a markup on the exchange rate. So like moving like an article and content around the 7 best bar in Rome could be a good article for you as an expert, but will not help you to understand that subject, not necessarily. Versus other stuff that is less engaging and probably a little bit more boring. That's why we do a lot of stuff. So we recently had a piece, our creative team had like a rate race where we had like all banks and other provider like racing on Lego blocks, and like showing that like the more there is the fee and the more painful is that experience. So we use this kind of stuff to do things like price comparison when we compare actual fees, and we try to make the subject less, you know, you don't talk with your friends when you go out about exchange rate. You know, it's not that sexy and engaging. So like
I mean, in a way, it is a classically boring subject, isn't it? It's like insurance, but at the end of the day, if you don't exchange your money, you don't get to spend it and enjoy yourself. So there is a story there.
It's boring on the technical front, like, but at the same time, the concept is not highly technical to understand. Like it's very simple math. It's just like bringing people in the mindset to understand what the problem is. Like we're not talking about like highly complicated financial forecasting or like, you know, this kind of stuff that you would need a finance expert. Most of the content that we do is like retail, I would say, especially on the consumer front. Then we have like, it could be like for like a business product, we have more business oriented services. These are probably a little bit more technical, but in general, like there's nothing that anyone could understand. It's just about getting people to talk about it.
But because the reality is you're actually in the sex and booze industry.
What do you mean?
Well, it's like Parker Pens. Parker Pens thought they were selling tools to write with, when in reality they were selling gifts. And when they remarketed themselves to sell gifts rather than instruments to write with. So you're not actually selling a system to exchange money. You're enabling people to go on holiday, to have lots of sex and drink lots of alcohol. And that's what people are thinking of when that's their actual motivation. Their actual motivation isn't, a 3.7% exchange rate. That's good. Now it's like, well, I'm off to Ibiza, you know, I'm going to spend all my money on whatever. So and I think that's what TransferWise, because it's kind of got that whimsy about it. I think that's why it has an impact, because it captures that imagination and that emotion of what the people, you know, and it tends to. I assume that your demographic is fairly young, in the 20s.
Depends, actually. It's quite arguable. Like it's not just the guy who is like, and also core of our product right now is not really travel money. It's not you going to Spain on holiday, but it's rather maybe you buying a property in Spain, or like it depends. We have different segments within there. People retiring abroad. So the demographic.
But again, you're selling the dream, aren't you? You're selling a dream that they've had for many years. It's not so much you selling the actual.
You've got an interesting one as well. Nowadays, you've got a lot more people who are setting up an office in the Philippines or setting up an office in India and staffing it, having somebody to run it, and running a team that will, you know, act as a cheap outsource for them alone. And, you know, the ability to transfer and save money there is, of course, a key demographic. Now, again, that does tend to be the younger rather than older market. But when we're saying younger, we're talking, you know, under 50 rather than under 30.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. But like in general, like pretty much everyone. There's no predefined. Obviously, you know, you have that segment of early adopter tech people who, you know, are gonna try every possible fintech app that comes up, no matter what, no matter how buggy is the experience, no matter whether it does what it's meant to do. You have that segment, yes. But in general, like, I think we passed that stage. Like now, and that's why it becomes,
that gets to the heart of why I say empathy is so important, because I see so many people who you say, right, look, understand your customer. And as you said there, Lyndon, they think the customer is somebody who wants to exchange money. And they forget that next step. They think the customer is somebody who wants to buy a pen, instead of understanding somebody wants to buy a pen as a gift. And the measure of how successful that purchase is how well that gift is received.
Whether they get laid that night because of the pen. That's the.
I think we're going too far there. Those are usually retirement gifts and things, but either that or you've just passed your spelling test. Either way,
the over 60, you know, they're a happening generation.
Takes a pretty sexy pen, I tell you.
You've got the under 12s and the over 60s. You know, it's not the hottest market around, but then again, you know, those ages, maybe the pen itself turns them on. I will bring Michael straight in at this point, because we haven't said hello yet, and we haven't found out what you've been up to this week, Michael.
So, you know, I continue my long onward march to get all of the certifications on the planet. And so I passed my analytics now. I got the AdWords, you know, onward and upward, adding them as I go for continuing education. But you know, what you've been talking about just touches on, you know, so many issues for so many SEOs. And, you know, I just keep taking what you're all saying and taking it back out to like the macro level. So, you know, one thing that you're talking about is friction that we have as kind of technical marketers when what we do impacts people. Because damn it, you know, people are inefficient, people are noisy, people are unpredictable. So, you know, you could do all the technical stuff and do it, you know, rapidly and throw up, you know, a piece of software or an app or something, but damn, then people use it and they break it, you know, or they don't use it correctly. So darn those people.
The thing I really love is that people are unpredictable to themselves. And
yes,
this
ask
is why...
anybody, like a survey. I hate surveys. You always see them. Oh, it's rank factors. Let's ask 1,500 SEOs, what are the most important rank factors? And it's like, why? Right? Because it's like you say one thing and you do something else, or you take a survey and you say what you think the writer of the survey wants to hear from you. And, you know, so how much truth, how much bearing does it really have? It's really interesting to see what people will say, you know, in a survey. But if you're acting on survey results, then, you know, you're like, you're feeling in the dark with both hands, you know, blindfolded.
Lyndon just said in the side chat about empathy hacking. And that's exactly why I've always been a fan of Lyndon's writing, is because that's largely what he does. He often writes something where you don't necessarily think it's on topic. And I know that there have been clients who think, what the hell is he doing? That's not stuff with my keyword. No, it's not. But it's playing with the emotion of the person and putting them into the exact right frame of mind to suddenly be receptive to your offer when they would have spotted your use of keywords and been far too smart for it, because they're not idiots. What you're doing is picking the areas sometimes where you bypass people's cynicism. You bypass people's resistance to marketing because you're hitting them right where they're not used to being hit. The area they can't argue with themselves, the impulse area. And let's face it, you know, most of us are people who could realistically use my old saying, I can resist anything except temptation.
Especially when for companies that have got a product that is like doing, like, they have to come in as an alternative or something out there, you're basically telling your customer you have been wrong on this subject all the way long. And then and then some of these people, not everyone is willing to accept that, you know, especially when you attack them, or someone thinks, oh, I'm an expert of finance, and then you go to them and tell them, oh, actually, your bank has been screwing you for the past 20 years, and this guy's like, you know, it's not true, you know, because I'm not the kind of guy that gets screwed. And you, like, it's quite easy to find quite opposite reaction. Like, people, the instant initial reaction is for people to tell you you're wrong. It's like in similar for survey, when you ask them, you know, perception of themselves, it's not that they necessarily lie, but it's like they go towards telling you a picture that is not, could well not be the reality, and you know, it's quite.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is, you know, Michael, you're doing these certifications, and a lot of people would say, oh, well, he's obviously just trying to get these because it'll enhance his career. And of course, that's nonsense. They've missed your whole motivation. They may think, because they're prejudiced, that the whole reason people go for qualifications is to get a better job. Yeah, that's what you were told when you were 12, and we've all learned the real world doesn't work like that anymore. The days when you went and you studied hard at school and that guaranteed you a job for life disappeared 25 years ago. That world does not exist. Yeah.
Yeah.
These days we all have to change.
We're all on a course, an arc of lifelong learning, and if you're not, then you know you're relying on myths and the legends that they taught you when you're growing up, and you're always learning something new, or you're being left behind. You know. So
the word I'm looking for here is mastery. You are exercising your mastery. You're showing yourself as much as anybody else. I can do this. Not only can I do this, but I can do them all at once and give myself that extra challenge. And that's what it is. This is a challenge for you that you're enjoying.
Absolutely. Every time I read a post that somebody is making an announcement, like I just read today, LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is finally offering this custom audience feature that, you know, we've been fortunate enough to have in Facebook and Google. And, you know, the idea that you can chuck your email addresses of your actual customers up there and have them matched up with profiles on that platform, in this case, LinkedIn, which is the best place to get business to business leads, is awesome. So finally, LinkedIn gets their act together. They're owned by Microsoft now. You know, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it's awesome. And I read the post, and it describes the way this one particular guy is like saying, okay, I get my list up there, my customer list, and I immediately take out, or these are people who have been prospects. I've gathered their emails. They've subscribed to my email newsletter, maybe. It showed interest in the brand, but they didn't buy necessarily. But there are buyers in there too. So now I got to take my list of actual buyers and throw it up there and take them out of the list, because I'm going to use LinkedIn to get in front of people. I don't need to get in front of my current customers so much, right? So just the idea of using that kind of access to people who have evinced interest in the brand makes my palms itch. I want to get my hands on that, and I want to do that. And, you know, that's part of what keeps me going. It's always like a newer, better way of getting closer to people who may actually be interested in what I'm peddling, right? And I don't have to ram it down their throats, or I don't just have to acquire a bunch of traffic up here at the top of the funnel that may or may not be interested. Like you said, Ammon, I mean, are they qualified? Is there any way they're actually going to buy? Or am I just trying to impress my employer or my client with a ton of traffic? You know, and if you're doing that, you know, you may be a crackerjack, fantastic SEO metrically, but business impact, you're not going to perform, you know.
Yeah, we've got a client that illustrates this point exactly. I won't give away too many specifics, but considering we only get 30 viewers on this, it's not giving away too much of a secret. That this is a company that does very expensive holidays. And when I say very expensive, I'm talking holidays at £50,000 a head to $150,000 a head.
Wow.
They are custom made, real experience holidays. Say you're doing one of the African safaris, there will be helicopters that take you from camp to camp. You're there with expert guides, the ones who actually, wrote the book on this particular creature and have studied it for 30 years and have filmed documentaries about it. That's who your tour guide is. Somebody who can really tell you about this and really give you that experience. Oh, and then lunch shows up as a truck brings a banquet, a table, waiters and staff to serve you champagne in the bush.
Wow.
These are really expensive holidays. These are one-of-a-kind holidays. These are trip-of-a-lifetime holidays. And of course, they've taken this to a well-known company that does pay-per-click advertising, and they put luxury holidays. The word luxury is entirely wrong in this context. Look, luxury is a guy who spends 3,000 usually on his holiday, who's going to spend 4,000 this year. He thinks he's spending on luxury. The Kim Kardashians of this world don't use the word luxury because they're bloody entitled to it, and you'd better not forget it. They do not use the word luxury.
They also don't click on PPC ads.
They use exclusive, they use bespoke, but they do not use the word luxury because to them it's not seen as a luxury. After all, they've worked damn hard for this money. It's up to them how they want to spend it.
Well,
luxury.
plus the idea of using the term luxury in terms of the Serengeti. I've been on safari. Hey, it ain't luxury. I don't care who your guide is. It's roughing it, okay? So.
When
but the helicopter takes you to your 5-star hotel at the end of the night.
And champagne, and everything's up on a wooden platform, or you're like in a village in the trees, walking little catwalks between the bar and your hut or something. I mean, yeah, that's pretty luxurious.
It's unique, okay, but it's not 5-star type luxury, no.
No, but it's a particular crowd that it represents. The guy who runs this, he's not what you'd expect either. This isn't a guy who's there for the big money and to cater to these people. What he's dealing with is he is dealing with the entrepreneurs and the big money people who have the most to donate to charitable causes, to regions of the world that are in trouble, where nature is disappearing, as just as the Amazon rainforest has been. This is the guy who introduces Sting and Bono to those places and to those peoples and gets them involved.
So it's almost like
a holiday initially, through an experience.
Yeah, it's almost a development and a PR mission for this person, sounds like. And that's awesome. I was just reading today about a woman who was well known. I wish I could recall her name, but she was always on about sustainable ranching practices in Kenya or wherever the heck she was, and she just got her ass shot, on her property by a bunch of guys who wanted to walk their cattle through her property, and that's not even talking about the poachers who are, taking out the last of the elephants and the white rhinos and all of that. So, I mean, it's a lot of money. Maybe the guy makes a ton of bucks, but as long as there's that mission attached to it, isn't that awesome? And that's not necessarily an SEO thing, unless you're really fortunate, you're discovering those terms attached to a particular site or something, that people who are interested in that kind of experiential travel are also interested in, like social investing, investing in companies that have a return to the environment, or use green energy and those kinds of things.
Yeah, causes. Yeah.
Causes, yes, that's the word.
Exactly. Well, this is it. People do not get to that level of disposable income and take their family on. There's a lot of millionaires who are skinflints. These are the guys that have millions in the bank and drive a car that's 30 years old and make one of their junior staff go out and polish it every day. They don't pay for a car wash. They want this car looked after, but it'll be one of their juniors. That's a whole different kind of person. They would not be in the market for these holidays. The kind of people who are the kind of people who are always looking for good causes, ways to, let's face it, offset some of their tax burden, but making the world a better place in doing it. These are the entrepreneurs that we know and follow on Twitter and so on and so forth. And
well, that's the thing. See, if you look at millionaires as a whole, or multimillionaires, people tend to forget that because most of us aren't millionaires, we don't really know much about their lifestyle. We make a lot of assumptions, and we tend to forget that there are as many different types of millionaires as there are different types of plumbers and single moms and soldiers in the army. There's just a lot of different motivations, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different quirks and flaws and dreams and disappointments. And we tend to look at this unknown group called millionaires and see them all in the same way. And some of those folks are filthy rich, and they're driving a 30-year-old Chevy because they're afraid they don't want anybody, least of all their damn family, to know how much money they have. Some of them are just repelled at the idea of being ostentatious. Some of them have causes. Some of them are just not real bright, but daddy left them a few million, and they got lucky. We won't go into which ones those are, okay? But I mean, we tend to see them all in the same light, and because they're unknown to us, we just assume that they're all the same, and they're not. So it's just as important to know your market there, your audience, as it is if you're trying to sell products on Etsy.
Exactly, and this is one of the things. Sometimes when people are segmenting customers, they look at who could buy it instead of who would buy it. It's one of those strange things. Psychology really does play in here, and it's where you do need to use empathy the most. It's where you do need to use an understanding of people that sometimes eludes those people themselves to be really successful. I've just realized we haven't really brought in William yet, and we're starting to get towards the end of the hangout. William, what have you been up to this week?
Come on, man. Unmute yourself there, buddy.
I'm unmuted. Thank you, Ammon. I know I've just been busy scouting the internet, trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. So.
You and Larry King.
Sounds kind of weird, huh? But yeah, no, just kind of figuring out what William wants to do and where I want to actually discover next. I've done so many different things. I've been going back into local guides, trying to figure out some of my studies with 1,600 companies taken, 11-mile radius, 60% of them are all not verified. Going back and trying to educate some of the public sector and especially the Chamber of Commerce's. I think if we can get them in, just having a simple little demonstration to just open your smartphone and see if you're actually on Google and if you're verified or not, and go to the next stage. But that's the next thing I'm working on. But yeah, thank you. It's been cool listening to a lot of the conversation here today on what is an SEO, what is not, what's a content writer, what is not, and those factors go back into conversion analytics. When we start to go back to the entire goal of a website, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get calls? Are you trying to get new leads? Are you trying to sell an e-commerce product? What are you trying to do? At the end of the day, it's a matter of educating your public of what your product is or service.
And sometimes understanding the old softly catchy monkey thing, that sometimes you don't go directly for the sale. That won't work. Look at something like a Ferrari. Most of the people who want to buy a Ferrari are never going to be in the market to buy a Ferrari, except maybe secondhand. But the passion, the desire that you arouse in them is what makes the people who have the money want to show it off by buying the car that everyone else wants and can't have. Absolutely. The Ferrari is an absolute trophy purchase, and what you do is the more you make people who can't afford it want it, the more you make those who can afford it likely to buy it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
No, I was the same thing with you guys' resort opportunity. You have to actually sell them on what you're offering them and what's the opportunity for them to get out of their house and move or go travel with their entire family to your property for holiday. If you don't, then you're missing the boat because your competition is going to kick your butt. they will, pay the advertising, AdWords, Bing, whatever it needs to take to get there, to get your clientele away from you. Now, how do you get it back is the next stage.
But on the Ferrari subject is actually quite painful because Italian government is going after anyone that shows off that. So like if someone stop you with like or like having a card, they send a tax department, the inspector to check your company and those kind of things. So Italian people who own one, some of them they've done their best to hide it, which is like the worst thing for marketing. Like people cannot even sell the dream to the rest about having a good car because they literally move it somewhere else. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but this is it. This is the reason why ultimately, for my own style of SEO, I always prefer to start with somebody who understands marketing, because I find it a lot easier to teach somebody like that enough technical to get by than somebody who knows the technical, because I just find less often they are able to pick up the marketing. I think usually if they have it, they've already gone beyond the stage where they're applying for jobs. They're running their own company.
Don't you think, Ammon, that empathy is somewhat in a person's nature? So on the one hand, you're trying to take somebody who is ignorant of a particular style or way of attacking a problem and teach it to them. And on the other hand, you're trying to change the nature of an individual, their character. Sure, that's going to be a lot tougher. I agree with you. I would much rather take a school teacher and teach her how to do SEO than to take a software engineer and teach him how to deal with first grade kids.
Yeah.
Because
Different.
It takes a special,
Yeah. People are definitely suited for different kinds of things and activities, and some people are better suited for certain markets. So you said hire a teacher. Fine. I mean, if you were selling products to teachers, who better? And that teacher may go off and create their own website. And because they understand that teachers buy a lot of stuff for their students themselves out of their own salary and not get the money from the school, that could be an enormous insight. So, it takes a lot of different kinds of people. That's why, when I'm working for, an enterprise level company, or, I'm talking to big business, a lot of the talk ends up, for hiring purposes around this word culture. And, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit.
Yep.
It's like, right. It's like this template that somebody wants to impose. It's like when you say brand, I guess, I want to say that my company is like this because the people who work for it are participants in some kind of culture. Like they have their own language and, they do this one thing on Friday nights or, whatever it is, it's free beer pong on Fridays or something at my development company. That kind of stuff controverts the use of the word culture to begin with. But if you're trying to get people to work for you who fit a certain model, I think it's like a disservice, because I might need somebody to build links and they may have to be the worst kind of opportunist out there and constantly shifting modes and models and stuff. But what I hire them for at a reasonable rate, they could be great at it, and maybe they will be leaning against the wall or out smoking in the parking lot when the company has a gig. But am I really looking for somebody to fit in, or am I looking for somebody to do the job?
Yeah, and this is it. You do need a mix. There are people who are very good at technical who make fantastic auditors, because their patience for going through the fine detail where it doesn't involve people is superb. However, they will struggle a little bit when we get to the COO part of the audit, because they can't quite do the persona matching. But yeah, I mean, everybody has a place, and this is why I don't say this is what makes an SEO. I'm just saying this is what I prefer for the kind of SEOs I want on my particular team, because that's the kind of SEO I'm used to selling as well. So I know I can get lots of work on that side of SEO.
I heard a great line a couple of weeks ago, that you don't need to know anything, because anything you need to know. You will learn when it happens. And we're kind of getting into that situation where, well, you know, if I want to learn about latent semantic indexing, I'll just look it up on Google and find it out and do it. And so then it becomes less about knowledge and the accumulation of knowledge, which is how it used to be, and more about mindset and your attitude. And that's what it comes down to, what Ammon's talking about with hiring a marketer to do an SEO rather than an SEO to do marketing, or an SEO to do SEO, is if you've got that right mindset, it doesn't matter what you know, because you will learn it. And it's, you know, I do a lot of training with content creators or people trying to be content creators, and you just instantly see people, and you know, you just said then the guy leaning up, smoking a fag, smoking a cigarette against, you know, a wall, just hanging out. A lot of the time, it's about that attitude, and that some of the people who have this willingness to shortcut and be a bit maverick rather than just follow the rules and thinking it's just A, B, C, D. And you can look at a team of people and you can instantly point out who are going to be the good content marketers, who are going to create great content, and who are just going to fulfill the brief to the minimum amount possible so that they can go and have a drink on Friday night. And what I found is it's the people who are slightly odd and slightly off center who are really good at creating the content, because they tend to see things a bit differently, and it's the normal types. And I think we've pretty much got a collection here of people who are off the center and look at things a bit differently. It's all good.
Thank you very much.
No, what you mean?
No normal people here tonight.
I'm insulted. I'm never coming back here. What are you doing? What kind of show are you running?
Lyndon, I'm happy to say I'm a geek.
We are at time for this week, I'm afraid. We will doubtless be back next week to demonstrate whether or not Lyndon is correct in his assessment. I think he might be.
I'm betting he is.
But yeah, we are past time, so we'll find out next week what everyone's up to this week. And thank you for joining us. Take care, everyone.
I know.